This episode of Ladder Legacy is proudly sponsored by the Bedford Group Insurance, helping families and businesses protect what matters most. Whether it's coverage for your home, your family, your team, or your future, Bedford's got your back with the best reliable insurance solutions in Florida. Visit our website to learn more, bedfordinsurance.com. And now on to your episode.
Hey everybody, this is Rudy Romero from Ladder to Legacy. I'm here today with John Browning, the one and only from Guardian Rock Wealth. He is the owner, solopreneur, and the man with your financial plan. John, thank you for coming on today with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, like everybody knows, a lot of these wonderful people I have on the show come from one of the networking events or groups that we're a part of. Some of them are clients, just really great people. But I love John's story, and it's one of the things that I've been waiting to have him on here, like a giddy schoolgirl excited to have him, because he's got such a plethora of knowledge and a wealth, plug that in there, of information when it comes to being the man who understands the financial plan. John, how did you even name Guardian Rock Wealth anyway?
Yeah, so when we were talking about what's the name after figuring out, what didn't have a, trademark on it yet and all that kind of stuff, we really probably overthought it. We thought part of it is building your wealth, but a big part of it is protecting your wealth. And how do you do that? There's actually a lot of different ways. There's not just one way to protect it. One way is, kind of what you do for a living. And another way is, within the assets that you have for retirement, emergency fund, and everything else, how is that protected against all sorts of different things, from taxes in the U.S. government to potential lawsuits to potential healthcare events, that type of stuff. So the idea of guarding it and something solid and heavy and immovable, making that your financial plan, that was the idea behind Guardian, and then Rock, and then throwing wealth in there as well.
Nice. So it wasn't like you just threw something at the wall and guessed. You really did have a plan then when it came to.
We did, yeah.
That's awesome. See, so my whole point, not only does he care about your wallet and your retirement, he actually cares about the name as well. Because a lot of people go into this and they just throw a name out there. They go into ChatGPT now, right? They use AI and all this, and they come up with something. It's cool to have somebody who's so invested in the business that they actually paid attention to their name. So what does Guardian Rock Wealth do anyway? Let's get into meat and potatoes.
So rather than say just be a financial advisor, nothing wrong with that or that profession at all, but we wanted to do more. We wanted to look at the entire wealth management picture. So we do wealth management. And I lost your picture, Rudy. Where'd you go? We do more than that, in that we will look at your insurance needs, and we'll refer you out on the property and casualty side. We'll work with you on the life insurance side, the annuity side, but we also want to be very careful about not over-insuring, which I also find to be somewhat of an issue at times. And then we also look at the tax picture. We're not tax advisors, but we do work with your CPA, or we can refer different CPAs depending on what your needs are. So we look at really all of that. And then probably the most important thing, the base of it all, is really getting to the root of it all. And what is it that you want? But more importantly, why is it that you think you want that? Because we really start there and we say, well, what is it that you want? What kind of retirement do you want? Do you want to retire? And many times by the time we start asking the question why, and I become like a 2-year-old, the answer changes quite a bit, especially when you're talking with couples and girls and guys, they tend to have different ideas. And when you look at one side of the table and they're sort of rolling their eyes as the other one speaks, you start to have fun with that. And you say, I'm not sure that, she agrees with what you just said. Let's talk about that a little bit. And it can end up being a really productive and a really important conversation that you never had with anyone else. Maybe you've had it with somebody that you love, that loves you, but you've never had it with somebody who will kind of keep on poking the bear and asking you why again and again until you get to about that 5th or 6th or sometimes 7th or 8th time that I ask you why, that you really get to the root of what it is and why you want it. And then once you have that target and that goal, then we can start building the plan around that.
So when is the time to build that plan? Because I know that some people think I need to be a millionaire, right, to protect my wealth. but wealth comes in all shapes and sizes, all denominations, all different ways. It may not be businesses, it may not be insurance plans, it may not be just formal cash or money market accounts. When is the best time to start saving? And I know you're smiling because you have an answer and you're about to hit me in the face with it. It's going to be great. What is it?
I mean, so when is the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago. When is the next best time? Right now. And it truly is, the earlier that you start, the better, and the better results you are likely to get. That said, a lot of people will come to me and say, oh, no, it's too late, I haven't done it. It's also not too late. The ideal time, which I think is what you're really getting at, I don't mean to dodge the question, but the ideal time, aside from if you can start when I have a 17-year-old client, Rudy. So, and she's kicking it. She's got a job. She's got a W-2. She's contributing to a Roth IRA, a little bit, not a lot. She's going to be so far ahead of the game once, she's my age. It's not even going to be funny. It'll be fantastic for her. And then the next best time, if you can give me 5 years, if you can give me 10, great. But if you can give me 5 years before you really plan to retire, we can do so much great work. Especially in terms of tax planning, especially if you're planning to retire, say around 65. If we can talk before you turn 60, because at 65 a lot of things happen on the tax front that very few people ever think about. It's not just about federal and potentially state taxes, it's also about your Medicare. And how do you not end up paying way more for Medicare than you should? And if you do the right planning, you can avoid thousands upon thousands of dollars going to the government, which I want to pay my fair share, but why pay more?
Well, you pay what you need to pay per the legal loopholes and opportunities that are provided by the government, of course, because no one of us would ever want to take away from the government, because the government's great. We love you, government, of course. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what I'm hearing is that your strategy doesn't just include, hey, here's a $100,000 check, John. Can you just go make me some money? It sounds like what you do is an all-encompassing plan that gets into the root, and you ask that root 5 or 6 times to really give you the true answer of what they're looking for out of that strategy. So how does that differ from our old father's way of doing financial services?
Well, let's go clear back to like 1978. And when they had the pension funds and everyone had that defined benefit plan, 1978, they said, hey, we've got a better idea for you, the people who are hard workers out there. And it was a great time to sell this idea because tax rates were extremely high, like significantly higher than where they are now. We complain about where they are now, but they were in the 50, 60, 70% range back at that time. So the idea of deferring taxes, maybe they'll be lower later, it's a fantastic idea. Fast forward a little while and you start to realize that becomes now a tax trap. So while our mom and dad still had, okay, if you're my age, right? If you're in your mid-50s or something around in there, our mom and dad had that defined pension plan and they had Social Security on top of that. They really didn't have to be their own wealth manager. The pension plan folks did, and the Social Security is helping them out. What they did is they transferred all that to people who were really good at what they did. So maybe they were a good plumber, electrician, accountant, lawyer, whatever it is that they do, doctor, but they didn't take any classes. They didn't have any experience in managing their own wealth, but they got all the responsibility for doing that. So then it became a thing, well, everybody just max out your 401k and you'll be fine. What we found out is that became kind of a tax trap, because as that grows, what is a percentage of a bigger number? A bigger number.
A bigger number, no kidding.
Yeah. So what happens when you're growing all this stuff tax deferred, you end up paying more in taxes, and the government understands that. They absolutely know that, and they play the long game. They're going to get more money later while you feel good all the time you're contributing to your 401k or all those tax deferred plans that are out there. I'm not saying that those are bad. You should use them as one of the tools in your toolbox, but don't keep them until you retire. There's ways to convert them into things that I say they're TFF, which is tax-free forever. When you can do that at the right time and doing the math behind the madness. You can literally, people think I'm kidding when I say this, you can literally save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime taxes.
Really? It's that much? I mean, is that, and I guess that's the problem, right? Most people are used to hiding their money under a mattress. Now from a mattress went to, Bitcoin and what was the other stuff? They were doing NFTs and all this other
NFTs.
stuff, right? There's so many different ways that people are trying to figure out to do that. And is that the best option, or should somebody go to somebody like you who's a professional who understands all these things and always, obviously you've implemented strategies over a career, which I'm sure we'll get into, that has given you the ability to know some of the better options, some of the best options, and the A+ options that are going to be the ones that are going to give you the best return on your investment. But how does somebody figure that out? So you said the best time is when you plant a tree, right? When do you plant one? 30 years ago. So, let's just say you're that entrepreneur now, or you're that young adult who's now getting into the working world. Do they take a 401k plan from their employer? Do they go and find their own? Or do they say, hey, John is the guy to go to. I should start with him and then figure out, because he's going to help me build my wealth, other than just part and piecing this thing, because it doesn't seem like that's the best strategy in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, real generically, and of course this can't be investment advice because we got a big audience here, but while this is not investment advice, generally speaking, you want to use that 401k to the best of your ability. And sometimes that means maxing that out. Other times that means maxing it out up until your employer match, and then using the rest to contribute to something else. Other times it might mean not using it at all, but that's pretty rare. You almost always want to take advantage of a 401k or whatever retirement plan that your employer offers. But in addition to that, there are so many other tools that you can use and put in your toolbox. And I often refer to things as tools because I do a lot of work with blue collar folks. I really enjoy working with them, people who work with their hands. I just have such a huge respect for what they do because I'm not very good at that. And I tend to talk about tools a lot, and that's what money is. Sometimes we spend so much time trying to build a portfolio, we forget it's just a tool that we're using to build our best life. And
that's amazing. It's a great way to think
that's
about it.
the book I wrote, Build a Life, Not a Portfolio. So yes, use all those tools, but use them in the right way at the right time. And I often play the YouTube game. I don't know if you've ever played that.
No, which one?
When I'm speaking in front of a group of people, I'll say, let's play the YouTube game. Now, what's that? I say, well, if you had a leaky faucet, maybe it's just dripping a little bit, would you go to YouTube to kind of figure out what should I do to fix that? Might be a good idea, right? That sounds reasonable. Now, if you had the whole sewer was backing up and you had 3 feet of water on your floor, would you just kind of go on over to YouTube and try and figure that out? Or would you call the plumber, the expert? You'd probably call the plumber and skip the YouTube. Same thing with you packing your parachute for a weekend out with the guys and girls. You're going to jump out of a plane. Are you going to YouTube that? Or are you going to maybe hire an expert that knows how to pack that parachute? Same thing goes with your financial future. This is it. You only get this shot to make sure your financial future is secured. Do you want to do that based off of some YouTube videos, some of which are great? There's some great information out there. Many of which really are not. A lot of my clients kind of follow other YouTube channels and newsletters and things like that, and we end up talking about why some of that's great, some of that's not great, and the idea of never falling in love with any particular strategy, asset class, company. You want to have what I call portion control, like I don't have at Thanksgiving.
Me neither.
But in your portfolio, the same goes for that. And there's lots of reasons for your portfolio to get out of balance. Some of them very good and fine and wonderful reasons, but you don't want to stay that way because it puts you at greater risk of blowing up your future.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'm sure that has been something you've learned through a culmination of years of experience, making sure you understand how to strategize the best, right? Because it's all really what it is years of learning how to be the best strategist when it comes to investing with other people or for other people. So with that said, what made you open Guardian Rockwell? Because I'm sure this is not the first career you've ever had. And if it is, it'd be amazing. But I'm sure you've obviously had some fun over the years. What got you to this point where you said, hey, I'm opening up my own shop and I'm going to build this beautiful monster that's going to help people, but also support my family and, build a wonderful future.
Yeah, it really was born out of my years on Wall Street. So I worked for some big Wall Street firms, some smaller ones as well. One of them I built from a very small zero and built it up to $1 billion in sales, and then all of a sudden it got gobbled up by another big firm. And so here I was back in a big firm again. That treated me well financially. I spent a lot of my career chasing the portfolio and not the life. I unfortunately gave up some really cool parts of my life, sometimes with my kids, that I regret and I'll never get back. And that's what I try and sort of save other people from doing. But I would go around the country and I would speak to other wealth managers or financial advisors. And I would be, say, the keynote speaker at an event. And afterwards, it was the reward for being in the top, say, 12 financial advisors in the company is we did a bit of a round table. So it was a round table with John, the portfolio manager from Morgan Stanley or wherever I was working at the time. And whenever I would do that, they would throw ideas about portfolios and clients and say, well, what should I do with this? And I would say, well, have you tried this? And they'd say, well, we can't do that. Why can't you do that? Well, my firm won't allow it. Well, why? That's clearly the best thing for the client. And there's really good reasons why big firms don't allow certain things, because they have a lot of advisors they have to manage and make sure that they don't make mistakes, and they have to manage all those folks. But at the end of the day, after being a portfolio manager for as many years as I had been one, there's got to be a better way. So having my own firm, I'm able to do what the client needs. I don't take advertising money from any mutual fund companies, or I don't do that because I don't want to have that conflict. And I do what I believe is correct and right for the clients. And it's just it's a dream come true for me. It's not easy. It's hard to be, on your own without the big advertising budget, but it's much more rewarding. It's less lucrative than Wall Street, but much more fun.
But it sounds like it's treated you well, for the last, how long have you had Guardian Rock Wealth open now?
We are in our 6th year.
That's amazing. To break through 2 years, obviously in the world of business, is amazing. To get to 6 years, you're obviously doing something right. You're getting people in the door. You're helping them. You're doing something right. But to touch on what you had said about mutual funds and working with all the other big guys. So what is really the biggest difference between working with, let's just say, like you said, a Morgan Stanley or somebody, insert big fund, than working with John, Guardian Rock Wealth? What's the big difference or differentiator that would help people understand a little bit more? Because I think it's like a language to people. They just don't understand, right? They don't get the difference between a portfolio manager or a fund manager or an analyst or all of that. It kind of goes over people's heads, but explain a little bit for us so they do get it.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that we provide, Rudy, is that number one, we're very hands-on with each individual client. There's no box. You don't get put in box 1 because you fit this risk parameter, and box 2 because you fit this risk parameter. You get your own custom-made box. And I used to manage mutual funds, so you will find next to zero, not quite zero, but almost zero mutual funds in our portfolios, because I happen to know that they're outdated, they're inefficient, and there have been a lot of innovations within the wealth management industry that serve our clients much better than something like a mutual fund. And since I have the experience in managing those, I can do that myself. So that's probably one of the biggest differences. And the other is that I'm going to put a team around you, and as part of the group that we're part of the networking group, is I'm going to put a team, I'm going to put a great CPA. I don't get paid for that. No kickbacks, nothing on that. I'll put that CPA on your team, and I will have done the research. I will know, trust that person. And if they don't give you the kind of service that I want for me, and they don't give that to you, then we're going to switch. But that doesn't happen because I've worked with these people for years. If you need an estate planner, I've got a wonderful estate planner for that. If you need some other type of legal advice, I have great people for that. You need basically anything else on the spectrum. Rudy, if you really are into Rolex watches, and I've done this for 2 of my clients, we have a watch guy. All he does, right? If you need a painter, we've got that. If you need a mortgage that's not the conventional mortgage, this is what another thing that people don't understand. You
An
don't have
all-in-one
to
mortgage?
have, yeah, there you go. You don't have to have a regular mortgage if you've got a good credit score, and you can have something much, much better, right? So,
Yeah, it's amazing. So you're like a full service, full stop shop. It almost feels like, and again, the terminology may be wrong, but it sounds like a family office a little bit, right? You're managing just not people's money, but it sounds like you're helping them really be successful in so many different avenues. Now, you may not be controlling that necessarily, but you're having the parts and pieces, and you're able to say, here's my guy who can do this for you, and this person to do that for you, which I'm going to take a guess if I was just to call Fidelity today and try and do that, that's just probably not going to happen. I probably wouldn't even get a phone call. I'll probably get an automated system.
you probably get an automated system. Now, if you've got enough money, like at a JP Morgan or what, this is what I see often, is that they'll say, well, great, we've got our team here. We've got our own team. And the issue with that is what I find is some firms are worse than others about it, but you'll get this portfolio, you won't really understand what it is and why it is that way. And even if you ask the question, you won't quite get the response that's satisfying, because frankly the person that you're talking to doesn't know, because somebody else is doing it. And unless you've got 50 million, $100 million, you're not talking to the portfolio manager. If they do put you in, a different type of investment, it's the XYZ firms, their firms, and they're charging you another fee. So with Guardian Rock Wealth, there's no nickel and diming. It's one fee that we charge. If we do something else for you, 9 times out of 10, there's no charge for that. It's all rolled into that one thing. You're not paying the fee of the mutual fund because we don't use those. You're just paying Guardian. You know exactly what you're paying. You see it on your invoice every single quarter. There's no ambiguity. Most of the other larger firms will have, oh yeah, we'll have our other team over here, and guess what? They're going to charge you an extra several basis points, which is a percentage of a percent. And eventually that adds up and really puts a drag on your performance over time.
Yeah, I can imagine it's got to hurt a lot, especially if you're not getting, like you said, a very specific situation transpiring for you. If you're just getting generic advice, I mean, it's like anything else. There are some wins, but they're not going to be true wins that you could say in 5 years, I can help you make a big difference, which is, it's amazing to think that, the amount of work you're putting into it could do that, which means that you've obviously had a lot of training. So when it came to starting Guardian, what were some of the struggles, I guess, that all us entrepreneurs, solopreneurs kind of go through? I mean, I can't imagine it's easy. I'm sure you have a license in 51 out of the 50 states and 100 other items that you have to have in place to do that. What was that struggle, or what was the easy parts at building this rock?
Yeah, probably for me, and I've been on a couple shows. I've been on the Corporate Escapee podcast and show, and a couple other ones, and I talk about this all the time. When you've got a lot of experience in your field, you've been a portfolio manager, you've talked with clients, but all the clients that I spoke with directly were brought to me, and you had to have about $100 million if you were able to walk into my office at like Morgan Stanley or Guggenheim or someplace like that. So now I'm in a position where I'm the business owner, and you have to go out and find those clients, and you don't have that big advertising budget. That was probably the hardest thing and the biggest shock to my system, because I'm not a sales guy. I try and provide a lot of value, but I don't think I'll ever be really great at selling anybody anything. That's a struggle for me as a business owner, because I don't want anybody to buy something that they're not going to get 100% value on. So that's one of the biggest struggles that I've had. The other one being all of the things that you don't think about when you start up a small business, like the legal costs of setting it up and setting it up right, and what things are truly necessary versus you want to have them in place, and when do you put them in place then later on. You and I were just talking about cybersecurity. I think you could just spend everything you make on cybersecurity and still not feel like you've got enough.
That's what Eric told me, at least.
Yeah, right.
So obviously, you're setting all this up, and how did you overcome that sales part? Because I mean, I'm sure you're dealing with the markets, you're dealing with whatever you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. What did you do to overcome it? Was it YouTube? Was it ChatGPT? Was it just going out there shaking hands and kissing babies? What was your way of figuring it out, because I'm sure there's a lot of business owners right now who, like you said, they don't have a $10,000 a month marketing budget. In insurance, that's light, $10,000 a month. So for me, I can't spend 10 grand a month on just marketing. It just makes no sense. So what have you done to try and, increase your value and bring that to the table and show everybody you're the guy to go to?
So a lot of mistakes. I mean, a lot of mistakes.
Does that happen? Oh, I've never heard of that before. Business owners make mistakes? No.
Yeah, and still making a few of them. But in general, what I found was networking is your number one tool to use. But a lot of people do networking what I consider to be the wrong way, and I did as well for the longest time. The most effective way for me to network, I have found, strictly to you're at a networking event or you go to any type of event, not being afraid to walk up to somebody and say, hey, how you doing? And really mean, how are you doing? And then listening to them and not even thinking about your own business. Don't even give it another thought. Think about their business and who do you know in your network that you can introduce, not share a lead with, but introduce to them. To maybe it'll be a good connection, maybe it'll just be, hey, it's nice to know you, but you've introduced them to somebody else. That is true value. And then there's that reciprocity. They're going to feel like, gee, I got value from this guy. How do I provide value? And that's how real networking happens. You can't be thinking about your own business when you're networking. Otherwise, it just doesn't work nearly as well.
And I feel like we're not taught that, right? I think that's one thing. We're not taught how to run businesses in school, right? We're not even taught to balance a checkbook anymore. Most people don't even know what a checkbook is. I don't think many people even have checkbooks. So these are things that, throughout the years, we all learn. But how did you kind of hone in your craft? Because I know there's a lot of people out there who think you're just supposed to go out there and you get a business card or you get like a little token that was there somewhere this morning, and you're like, oh great, now I have a phone, I have this thing and I put it in the drawer and I do nothing with it, and maybe I send a message, maybe I make a phone call, or maybe it just sits here for the next 6 months. What has been your strategy to kind of find success for that?
So some people will tell me that this is dead. I don't believe it, although you do have to be consistent with it. Number one is you have to be memorable. And I don't mean like jump up and down and scream and holler. I mean, you introduce yourself, you're memorable because you have some things that you follow up with them with. You're going to introduce them to somebody. After that, you're memorable because you offer them other things that are of continuous value. Otherwise, people forget you exist. Everybody's busy. So if you aren't like sending them something like I do a daily market update every single morning, I do a podcast that's just behind the headlines, underneath the headlines, what's going on in the world. If you want it, so a lot of people don't want a daily email, and that's fine. But some people really like that because, hey, I don't have to read all the newspaper and I can still be very informed. I can talk to other people about it. I know what's going on. In 10 minutes a day or less, you can listen to it on your commute. Other people are like, I drip an email with my podcast. Goes out once every 2 weeks. And then I do a written, because you never know how people like to learn. Some like video, some like to read, some like to listen. So 3 or 4 different ways that you're hitting them with an email, maybe a quick text, without being over obnoxious with all that stuff. Just make sure that they don't forget that you exist and what you do. And over time, doing that consistently, I've had people call me that have listened to the podcast or read my book. They'll call me literally one of them called me 3.5 years after they had first met me and first read my book. Somebody called from Maine that said, hey, I got your book off of Amazon and I wanted to give you a call. You just don't know, and that's the hard part with us analytical folks. We like to say, I did this and I got that client. It's not exactly how it tends to work. It would be nice if I had found that. If I ever find that, I will share that with you. But it's very difficult. And the follow-up. You can't forget to follow up, and that means you've got to be organized and purposeful about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful advice. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the people listening, looking to grow their business, that's really it, right? There's no magical sauce. I haven't found it yet. Like you said, if I run into it, I'll let you know. But there is no secret sauce, right? There's no Big Mac sauce that we're going to put on this thing to make it taste better. You just have to work, and you have to do it, and you have to be intentional about it. And I can imagine graduating high school, you were intentional about what you wanted to do with the rest of your life, and you knew that Guardian Rock Wealth was going to be the thing you were building. But before you graduated high school, before taking it all the way back, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's actually a really interesting question. So I grew up in West Virginia. I was a solid C student. I was not expected to go to college, and they were questioning whether trade school would be too much for me. I mean, I was a classic underachiever in high school, but there were certain things that I liked, and one of the ways to get me to do anything, and anybody who has known me for a long period of time knows this, is tell me I can't do it. So I was told that I could not do college. So that meant I was going to do college.
University of West Virginia, baby.
That's right. So I went to college. Nobody that I went to high school with can quite believe that I ended up on Wall Street, that I've been on CNBC and Bloomberg and all. Nobody believes that. They just know me as the crazy guy who was running around the hills of West Virginia doing crazy stuff. And I really didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan when I went to college. I was like, I think I'll major in business, because I had my own small business. You mowed lawns, I put in water lines, I dug ditch. I did whatever I could do to earn money in high school.
But you were an entrepreneur at a young age.
I was, yeah. At 14, yeah, I was starting my own sort of business. And the great thing was when you're 14, you don't do things like, shouldn't say this on a podcast, but you don't pay taxes, right? You get paid in cash.
Yeah, it's over 7 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I always enjoyed that. And even from that young age, I began to realize when you go and mow the lawn of the 75-year-old lady, if you also are very nice to them, take some time to speak to them, you get tipped and you get a glass of lemonade. And that began my idea of customer service was really formed there. And then it was again networking, how I got my first job on Wall Street, which was, by the way, just answering phone calls. How can I help you today? How can I help you today? 100 calls a day, and solving people's problems, and then use that to get noticed for your next thing and volunteer for everything. And then suddenly I was working as an analyst, junior, senior analyst, and then got tapped to run risk management for Morgan Stanley and on the trading desk. And the great thing about my career is that I got to learn from some of the best minds in the business. I got to sit in the hallowed halls of Goldman Sachs and do deals with Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, all those big firms. A lot of what I did was listen and learn, and then somehow eventually I became an executive on Wall Street until I realized I really, after 9/11, I was in Chicago on the trading desk talking with people in New York when that happened. And because I was an executive at Morgan Stanley at that time and wasn't in New York, I got on the task force to kind of put things back together. So for the next year, it was really just a blur. I didn't know what was happening. You couldn't fly to New York, you had to drive. All of that just sort of happened, and suddenly one day, about a year later, I'm staying at the same hotel I always stayed at because that was the one constant in my life. I've got kids back home that have barely seen me. I'm in the Wall Street uniform, suit and tie, which I have sworn I will not put on if at all possible. Occasionally I will put on a suit and tie, but only if absolutely necessary. It was July, I was sweating through my suit. I had gotten up at 5 a.m. across the river in New Jersey, downtown, uptown, midtown for meetings. I was alone in that hotel room about 12:30 at night, looking down on what was still a mess, and I started wondering, what in the world am I doing? So bad idea to quit your very lucrative Wall Street career at that point. So I started the planning. And it did. It took another 15 years or so and more great experience and learning from Wall Street on how to do things, why we did things. But eventually, it was all kind of part of, when can I do this? When can I go out on my own and help real people instead of the faceless masses? So eventually I pulled the ripcord and started Guardian Rock, which has been a fun time. I like getting up in the morning now. I enjoy it.
And I think that's what we're all looking for, right? Is to find that thing. A lot of us moved to Florida for that, right? Is to find the place where you can wake up every morning and see a palm tree and smile and say, hey, I can work today, because remote work has been prevalent after COVID. But I think it's interesting. You had said you were a C student, you were an entrepreneur, you went to school because you wanted to go to school because someone, say challenged you, and you found the success. So I think a lot of people out there think, and this is part of why I started this podcast, that success is this very linear road. You have to be the captain of the football team who gets straight A's, who goes to an Ivy League school, whose parents come from money, there's this common misconception that building wealth or finding success has a very linear, straight path, but it's not. And it seems like for you, you decided, hey, I knew my path. I didn't know how I wanted to get there. You figured it out, but you knew you had an end goal and you're working towards that end goal. And it sounds like it puts you on a happier place. And I think family is, the most important thing. I always misspeak, but I know you have more than like 5 children, if I remember correctly. I can't remember.
6.
6, if I remember.
Yeah.
I knew it was like 5 or 6. So I can only imagine I only have 3, but it sounds like you figured out that family is more important. And a lot of people, it takes so long to get to that point and have the ability to do so, but you did it and you seem happier for it. I mean, I didn't know you before that, but I'm sure everyone probably could tell John before and after is probably a much more fun. John with a motorcycle, very happy John, smiling John. That's right. Is a very different John than Wall Street John wearing a tuxedo or a 3-piece suit to work every day. And
right.
There's a value in that, right? We know our children, for 18 years as kids, and the average life expectancy for a male in the U.S. is between 74 and 77, if I remember correctly, is what I've been told. And it's funny. I say to myself every day, hey, what makes you happy and can keep you happy is being able to figure that out sooner than later. And I think it's a blessing you've been able to do that. I mean, it truly is. And I'm really excited to kind of see, and over the next couple of years, what Guardian Rock Wealth turns into. I've only known you for about a year now, I'd say, but to see the smile on your face every time you come to our meetings when we're all seeing everybody and interacting, it's amazing because you really enjoy what you do. And I think a lot of people are missing that in their life, really enjoying what they're doing, really enjoying what they're up to. So if you had like a piece of advice for everybody out there listening, what's the one piece of advice that's kind of stuck for you throughout the years, whether it's from a family member, that old school father's advice or something you read in a book? What's that one thing that keeps you going through all those tough nights, building the company, doing your own thing? What would it be?
So Elon Musk has a great quote. Starting a company, it's like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss. Just know if you decide that that's your path, and it might be, you've got to love it. You've got to love what you do. And I would say for the most part, you need to love serving people. And in order to truly be successful, not just with the money that you make, but also with the life you create. And to me, just like, I wrote the book, Build a Life, not a portfolio, because you can have both, but you have to find what you truly love to do. And even if it's just serving people, my wife is a nurse. She will give and give and give of herself because she loves the nursing. She loves helping people. And for her, she started her own business with seniors, and she did that for 7 years. And it was horrible, right? You get no repeat business with the senior care, right? I mean, none, because they pass away and then you don't even get a referral. Yeah, it's just sort of the way it is. But she loved it. And, we made some money at it. We sent a few kids to school through with that. That was fantastic. Sold it. God help us. Thank you. We sold it right before COVID, not knowing COVID was going to be a thing. And that is right after I started Guardian Rock Wealth, and now she helps me with that. But you just have to love it. You have to love what you do, and don't be a miserable rich person. That is the reason I do what I do, and why I say build a life, not a portfolio. Because there are so many, and I ran into them all the time on Wall Street. There are so many people who are miserable rich people.
That was I was going to ask you that question. Does money make you happy? Is that the secret? Is it just stacking up all those chips?
It absolutely does not. And I know it might not make you happy, but it can buy you a boat. And you know what? I will tell you that a lot of my boat owners realize that a boat is just a giant hole in the water into which you pour money.
It's like buying a Harley.
Though. This is what I tell people. Money is a tool, right? And in the hands of a master craftsman, a tool can create the life that you want and can create happiness. But you can't keep just adding more tools. Otherwise, you'll end up with a pile of tools and no happiness, right? I don't know if that made sense. But at some point, you have to use that tool to do the stuff that you really love to do. Do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, where you want. If you're not able to do that, then all the money in the world is not going to make you happy.
That's words to live by, and hopefully it will be a soundbite that we'll be using, because I can't agree more. And it's sad, today's generation, I think, and it's not, I'm younger, but we'll call it today's generation, the generational today has really stuck to that TikTok, YouTube, thought process. At 19, let's all buy Lamborghinis. Let's all go, buy houses on South Beach, right? Let's all go buy expensive watches. Let's buy things, right? And I think at some point in the next 5 or 6 years, it will change. I do think it will change, not just because people run out of money, but also because I think we're changing as a culture, as a society, which I think is great, that we're caring about retirement sooner. We're talking about investing at a younger age. Entrepreneurs are getting younger, which means people are pushing the envelope. But that's why I say it's interesting. I'd love to see where Guardian Rock is in the next few years, because I think it will be interesting to see when people start to realize the importance of having tailored and non-generic help from somebody who knows what they're doing and where success can lie. I think when they see things like this, they see the authenticity of it, and they're surprised by it because they're so used to glitz and glam and YouTube fake stuff. And hey, this is raw, authentic, it's information, it's good information, and it's by somebody who actually cares. I would love to see what it looks like. I'd love to fast forward 5 years and then come back, because I'll be in my 40s. I'm almost in my 40s then. So like I say, I feel like a young guy in an old man's body. But there's always a question, John, I like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. It's most the important question in the world, I feel like, because it makes you think. And I didn't tell you about it yet, unless you watched the podcast before and then you cheated. But I'll ask it anyway. If you can meet one person, dead or alive, does not matter, and you can ask them one question, who would that person be, and what would be that question?
Oh yeah, I did not cheat, even though I did watch the podcast and I knew you were going to ask, so I should have known. I should have cheated.
You should have cheated. Oh, definitely.
I mean, there's so many, right? There's so many people throughout history. I can't think of anyone like living today, although there's some wonderful people out there. I think I would have loved to have met Ronald Reagan.
Interesting. Because the economics, politics, what the
just
Reagan
because of the realness, and I know he was a politician and he had to do the politic thing, but if you listen to what his speeches talk about and the humor that he used, he kind of told you what he was doing. Oh. At least he was honest about it, right?
Oh, and bluntly honest.
Yeah, I actually love the honesty. He would even tell you that, hey, we're doing this because it doesn't make any sense, but it got everybody else to where we needed them to be to move this pawn over here or whatever it was. He really explained it. I'd love to, and I guess what would I ask him? I would ask him how he became and what he would suggest for me to become such an amazing communicator. Because if I can communicate better, then I can help more people. And I have found that is the number one thing I try and I take classes. I attend seminars. How can I communicate better so that people will understand better the things that I know because I've done them for 30 years. Not things I don't know, I'm fine with that, somebody else do that, but the things that I know because I see so many people just shooting themselves in the proverbial foot. If I could communicate better, maybe I could help them more. And he was the great communicator.
Most definitely. And I think that's an amazing, no one's come up with that answer yet, so I appreciate it. I agree with it. An actor, a politician, an economist, a general, guy who knew what he was talking about, Reagan. So that's an interesting answer, and I love it. I love it. So, John, how do people find Guardian Rock Wealth anyway? Do you have maybe like a website or a Facebook or an Instagram or all three?
All of those. The best way to find me is you can find me on LinkedIn. I use that quite a bit. I put out the daily podcast, the bi-monthly podcast, and the monthly market written update. But then also guardianrockwealth.com. And that has links to all those things as well. And probably the very best way is to just pick up your phone. Open up the text app. Everybody has this thing. Open up that text app. Type in 321-421-5213. Type in the word life. I will not spam you with a bunch of text. I will send you a couple. One of them being a link to, it's kind of a business card. It's got a little video and it's got all the links to all sorts of information. My YouTube page, where I just record videos that I think people will get some value from. And if you maybe you don't want to talk to me, but at least maybe you get some value, you learn something. And hopefully you want to talk to me.
I think they'll want to talk to you, my friend. I think you'll definitely be able to get some people who want to talk to you. And the last question I have is, what do you like to do on your free time? Because now that everybody knows a little bit about you, I'm sure they'd love to know what you do on your free time.
Well, I just happen to have my newest one right here. This is what I
There
like
you
to do in my free
go.
time because I'm a grandpa now.
You're a
So
grandpa. That's right.
I got 3 of the 4 right here in the area, and we do fun stuff all the time. But I also like to hang out with my wife. We've been married 35 years, and
She's all right. 35 years.
she's okay. She's okay to hang out with, and we go hiking. I love to swim. That's part of another reason we're down here in South Florida is you can go swimming even in December. We get our blood's a little thin, so maybe not in December or January, but probably you'll probably find me in the water.
Than I am.
Yeah. So yeah, we like all this nature stuff that we can find all over. And of course, I grew up in the mountains, so any chance I get to go back to the mountains and hike the trails and look at what God created. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Almost heaven.
Yeah, and ride my Harley. If you ride the Harley in the mountains, now that is there's just nothing better.
I miss my time. I was in West Virginia. I was in Virginia, and I loved driving through Northern Virginia up into Winchester. Just the drive is absolutely spectacular. There's nothing more beautiful than Shenandoah. It really is an absolutely gorgeous place. So yeah. I definitely recommend everybody if they ever get a chance. You'd be surprised. They all make fun of West Virginia because they don't want you there. That's the secret. It was like Florida back in the day. It's not really
They should
bad.
Make the whole thing a national park.
That's exactly. It is pretty much what it is. People have no idea. They put these big propellers that look like ridiculous for energy. But they do that to keep you out. They just want to make you think it's one thing. That's hilarious. Well, hey, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on from Ladder to Legacy today. It was great information. I'm excited to get this out to the masses. I think there's some significant value, and I hope they learn from your experience. And I think that even I've learned from your experience, and it's great to hear hear another entrepreneur who's making their dream come true.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you.
All right.
Talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.